Alright, here's my story. It was a night I'll never forget, mostly because it haunts me every time I think about stepping into an airport. I don't even know why I was there in the first place. I had this gut feeling not to take the trip, you know? But there was no way I could miss it. My boss had sprung a last-minute work assignment on me, and, well, you don't say no to your boss when it's something big.so. I booked a late-night flight. Everything felt wrong about it from the start. The moment I walked into the airport, it was dead. You ever been in an airport that late? It's strange, like being in a place that's supposed to be alive and busy but just isn't. It feels wrong. The whole terminal was practically deserted, just a few people scattered around. Most of them were either glued to their phones or asleep in the hard, uncomfortable chairs. I remember sitting down by one of those giant glass windows, the kind that looks out directly onto the runway. I could see a few planes sitting out there, their lights blinking lazily in the fog that had rolled in. It was thick, like you couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of you. The runway lights were just these faint, glowing orbs in the mist, stretching into the distance. Honestly, it gave me the creeps. But hey, what could I do? I had hours to kill before my flight was even close to boarding. As I sat there, mindlessly staring into the fog, something weird happened. I saw movement on the runway. Not near a plane or one of those luggage carts, but just out there, in the middle of nowhere. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, or maybe some airport personnel. You know, someone doing maintenance or whatever. But the more I squinted, the more I realized it wasn't that at all. It was a figure. A person, maybe? They were standing perfectly still, just far enough away that I couldn't make out any details. Just a shadow, really, barely visible through the fog. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't normal. People don't just stand out there on the tarmac for no reason, especially not in the middle of the night in that kind of weather. At first, I brushed it off, told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just some weird illusion or someone working late. But the longer I stared at it, the more unsettling it became. The figure wasn't moving, at all. No shifting weight from one foot to another, no casual gestures. Just still. Completely frozen. The longer I looked, the more the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Something wasn't right. I glanced around the terminal, half expecting to see someone else noticing this, but no one else seemed to care. The few people around were completely oblivious, lost in their own worlds. I leaned forward, pressing my face against the cold glass, trying to get a better look. The fog was thickening now, and it swallowed the figure until I could barely make out its shape. I figured maybe they'd walked away, and I was just overthinking it. But then, the lights on the runway flickered. Just for a second, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. When they came back on, the figure was gone. Now, this is where things got really strange. Normally, if someone's walking around on the tarmac, you'd see their footsteps in the fog, right? The moisture on the ground was thick, and any movement would leave a trail. But there was nothing. No footprints, no disturbance in the fog where the figure had been standing. It was like they'd never been there at all. I tried to calm myself down, told myself I was probably just seeing things. It was late, and I was tired, that's all. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something again. This time, the figure was closer. A lot closer. It was standing right next to one of the planes, almost like it was watching it. My stomach dropped. There was no way a person could have moved that fast without me noticing, not in the time it took for the lights to flicker. And now that I could see the figure a little better, it didn't look quite right. It was too tall, too thin. Its arms were long, almost unnaturally so, hanging at its sides. But its face, I couldn't make out a face. It was just this blank, pale blur, like it wasn't fully there. I stared, frozen in my seat. Part of me wanted to call someone, to report it, but I didn't know how to explain what I was seeing. Who would believe me? They'd probably think I was sleep-deprived or hallucinating. I couldn't take my eyes off the figure, though. Something about it was wrong. So wrong that it started to move slowly, its head turned, and it seemed like it was looking directly at me. Even though I couldn't make out its eyes, I could feel its gaze. Cold. Empty. Like it was piercing right through me. My breath caught in my throat, and my heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I wanted to get up, to leave, but I couldn't move. I was glued to the spot, staring, waiting, and then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. 1 second it was there, and the next, gone. The fog swallowed it up completely, like it had never existed in the first place. I finally broke out of my trance and jumped out of my seat. My first instinct was to head for the exit. I didn't care about the flight anymore. I just wanted to leave. But as soon as I turned to walk away, the terminal's lights flickered again. This time, they didn't come back right away. The entire airport plunged into darkness for what felt like an eternity but was probably only a few seconds. When the lights came back on, everything seemed normal. But I wasn't about to stick around and find out if that thing was still out there. I grabbed my bag and started walking toward the exit, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened, but as I was passing by the windows again, something stopped me in my tracks. I glanced outside, almost out of reflex, and there it was. The figure. Standing right outside the glass, closer than ever. It wasn't on the runway anymore, it was right there, just a few feet away from me, separated only by the thin pane of glass, and now, I could see its face. Or what was left of it. Its skin was stretched tight over its skull, pale and lifeless. Its eyes were hollow, deep black pits that seemed to pull in all the light around them. There was no expression, no emotion. Just emptiness. It raised one of its long, bony hands and pressed it against the window. I watched in horror as frost spread from where it touched, creeping across the glass like it was sucking the warmth out of the air. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. I was done. I had to get out of there. I didn't care about anything else. I turned and ran, not looking back, not caring if anyone saw me. I didn't stop until I was outside, where the cold night air hit me like a slap in the face. I never took that flight. In fact, I haven't flown since. I don't know what I saw that night, whether it was some kind of ghost, a spirit, or something else entirely. But whatever it wasn't human. It wasn't supposed to be there. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that face. Those empty eyes staring through the fog. And every time I consider getting on a plane again, I stop. Because deep down, I know it's still out there.